Good morning, world. I am Judy, your web-based therapist, making therapy accessible and convenient for our clients in Florida and New York, and of course, sharing information worldwide. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and to start this Mental Health Awareness Month, the Surgeon General recently classified loneliness as a health crisis in the country. And that's why today I wanted to talk about 5 things we should know about loneliness. But before I get into that, I want to take a quick moment and say, if you are subscribed, thank you so much for being a part of our awesome world. If you're not yet subscribed, please take a moment and click the subscribe button below so you can join all this awesomeness. And remember to tick the bell so you are notified when I post new videos so you don't miss anything. And of course, if you'd like to purchase 1 or 3 of my books, also a link below that will take you to a site that shows you all your different options of where you could get 1 or 3 of my books. Okay, let me get back to it. The first thing I want to talk about is sort of, what loneliness is. But loneliness is so individualized. It's so different for every person who experiences it that even the researchers have trouble coming up with a specific definition, a specific what is loneliness, because some researchers define it as an experience, some define it as a feeling, an emotion. It runs the gamut because it's such an individual thing. But one thing that tends to be common in loneliness is that it happens when your connection resources or your existing connections do not meet your connection need, meaning that we as individuals, we need to connect with others. We need to have personal connections. And sometimes the resources, the people, the things that we have in our lives are not meeting our connection need. And that's what tends to lead to that loneliness. It creates a feeling of being left out. It creates a feeling of isolation. It creates a sense of being alone, where you can be in a room full of people, but you feel alone because you're not connected to those people. So that's kind of a short version of a definition or a description, but I can always do a little bit more on that if there is interest, but that's the short of it. The second part is that loneliness can be episodic or it can be persistent. Episodic meaning that it's situational. Something happens, like you move to a different city, you haven't really made as many friends, you haven't connected with enough people to meet your social needs or something like that, and that may lead to loneliness. Or it could be after a lot of people sometimes may experience loneliness after a breakup, where that connection you had with the partner is not there. That can those could be that episodic type or shorter term type loneliness. But there is persistent loneliness that happens when situations continue. For example, a person who may not have connected, they move to a city, they have not had made any connections with new friends, and that goes a long term, and then that isolation continues, and that may grow a feeling of loneliness. And of course, that feeling of loneliness may cause the person to isolate even more, thus making it even harder for them to meet and connect with new people. So episodic is when it happens, like short term, maybe situation, but the persistent is more when when situations are not changing. Because in order for loneliness to be in order to deal with loneliness, actions need to be taken, specific changes need to be made so that you can improve or you can increase and gain the connections that you are lacking. So episodic or persistent are 2 different types. There's a lot more, but the short of it, my long-winded version of the short of it. The other thing is that it can happen in different areas of your life. I mentioned how sometimes it could be a personal friendship type situation where you have not made enough friends and you don't have the social support that you need. It could be relationship wise. One thing that tends to happen sometimes when we're working on certain things, and we might get super focused on that, and it takes up your time, and you don't notice that you're not engaging socially, that you're not connecting with the people that, the people that are life affirming. You're not making those connections. Sometimes it could be more of an intellectual things, because sometimes, and it happens it can happen in friendships like that too, where you may outgrow your childhood friends or your friends from a certain phase of your life. where you're more interested in certain things, where you may have friends who you connected with at a specific phase in your life, where based on how you have changed or how they have changed, you're not experiencing that connection anymore. So you may have a sense of intellectual loneliness, where you don't have people to discuss the things that are important to you with. And of course, we know the relationship piece. And even in relationships, it can be so different, where you may be with someone and still be lonely because specific connections are not happening in the relationship. Maybe you have a partner that you're going out and doing things with, but you're not able to share share experiences that are of interest. You're not able to have conversations that you would like to have. You're not being that part of your certain pieces of the relationship are not fulfilling. So it can happen in various parts of life. And sometimes we tend to think of loneliness as something that happens to people that have no friends, that have nobody in their lives. But it's not just those people who may be susceptible to loneliness. A person who seems to have tons of friends may be lonely because the friends they have are not necessarily the friends that they relate to, the friends that they connect with. Or it could be that the friends they have are not the intellect are not able to have those intellectual conversations with them. Or it could be the relationship is so it could happen in different areas of your life. The fourth thing is that loneliness can actually lead to more serious health as well, physical as well as mental health related issues, because that feeling of isolation, that feeling of disconnect, as we know, many mental health issues can manifest physically, and just the same, loneliness can manifest physically. One often that we hear about, when one part of a couple died, and then you see soon after the other person dies, and people often say, "Oh, they died of a broken heart." That is a thing where a person, that loneliness, that feeling, that disconnect, that drain, that pain of that isolation can cause our body to have to compensate in different ways, and that can lead to different physical issues. And loneliness can often lead to depression as well as anxiety, because of that isolation is the perfect breeding ground for those two conditions. So even though it may seem like it's just loneliness, or people may think of it as just loneliness, it's not just loneliness. Loneliness can lead to a lot of serious health issues, include both physical as well as mental. And finally, loneliness is a common and growing problem. A lot of times people think that, oh, this is something that is just happening to me. This is something about me. This is something personal. It's not personal. It's not something individual to you. Your experience may be different from everyone else, but there is a growing population, or a growing part of the segment of the population that is experiencing loneliness. It started with, as we started shifting to this being this virtual connection, where we're all social media but not necessarily connecting with people. I often see people post on social media, text me, don't call me, I don't want to have conversations. Those are all things that are pushing us and isolating us from one another. And those are all things that have been contributing to this health crisis that we're now in. And of course, COVID did not help, because COVID led to a lot more isolation. Now we have a lot more people who are working from home, who are not engaging with the outside world the way they used to, and therefore are not getting to make certain personal connections with other people. So it's not something that is just you. So don't hold it in thinking that it's just you. It is something that a lot of people are experiencing. It is a growing problem, which is why it has been declared a health crisis. So let me do this quick recap. First, loneliness happens when a person's a person's connections are not met, are not enough to meet their needs for connection. When your relationships are not enough when the relationships you have do not meet your needs for that connection, that interpersonal connection. 2, it can be episodic or it could be persistent, in that it could be one thing that happened right now, and it leads you to experience loneliness for a short period, but over time you change things and that goes away. Or it could be a persistent thing when the situations are not changing and that loneliness continues. 3, it can happen in different areas of your life at different times of your life. So just because you're fulfilled in one area of your life doesn't mean that you cannot experience loneliness in a different phase, whether it's friendship or relationship. 4, it can also lead to more serious health issues, both physical as well as mental health issues, especially depression and anxiety are very common. And finally, it is a common and growing problem that started years ago as our society was becoming more disconnected, and COVID created even greater opportunity for that to happen. So it is a common problem. You are not alone. If you are experiencing loneliness, it's important to be able to speak up and say, hey, this is what's happening with me. As always, if you or someone you know happens to be going through something that's more than you can handle, please remember that there are professionals like myself who are available, able, and willing to help, and are even providing remote services who can assist with whatever you may have going on. So please take a moment and figure out who those people are in your community so that if you need them, you can reach out and get the help that you need. And that is all we have for today. Good morning, world. Have an awesome day.